Hello, my name is Chris. I'm an instructor at the university, and this semester I'm teaching online for the first time. I found out that many of the teaching strategies that I use when I teach in person, like putting students into groups, can work equally well when I teach remotely. Teaching and design strategies such as using Bloom's Taxonomy to focus my student learning objectives, and using backwards design to align all segments of my instruction are great strategies that are effective in any learning context. However, making my students aware of these designs can be challenging when teaching online. I try to be very explicit when I tell my students what cognitive levels they should be working at to build their knowledge and to get ready for their assessment. It's important for them to fully develop their knowledge at lower levels so that they can have a strong foundation to operate at higher levels. Each level of Bloom's taxonomy has action verbs associated with it. I can use these verbs to get some good ideas for learning activities, and also create learning objectives which are observable and measurable. By placing an action verb in my learning objective, I am telling my students the specific skill I expect them to perform in the learning activity, and again on the assessment. I explicitly focus my students' attention on these verbs so that they can better plan for their learning. I do this by speaking out the learning objective during my live or recorded video presentations and highlighting it on the written activity instructions I give them. During this activity, you will organize all of the components into a holistic representation. Students will study very differently and engage in different types of thinking based on their awareness of the cognitive level they are working on. For example, if I want students in my online freshman architecture course to understand how different shapes can better support weight, I may want them to apply their knowledge of shapes to construct and test different support structures using local materials where they live. To carry out this task, they would rely on their knowledge from lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy. They might remember different examples of these shapes that we talked about in class and how they supported weight. They would also rely on their understanding of why triangles are more stable than four-sided figures. Their strong foundation at lower levels will make them better prepared to make connections at higher levels. When it comes time to assess their learning on an exam, my students can now be more confident that their practice at appropriate cognitive levels of learning will help them reach the same level of their learning that was specified in their learning objective. If they only prepared at lower levels or didn't build a strong enough foundation before moving on to higher level practice, then they will be very likely to come up short when they need to demonstrate their knowledge by successfully completing assessment tasks. My students may fail to reach their learning objectives for a variety of reasons, but I can help them a lot by using backward design to align my learning objectives, assessments, and activities at the same level of Bloom's taxonomy. This consistency will help my students set their own learning goals and plan their strategies for practicing at the appropriate level. Just as instructors need to plan their teaching, students need to plan their learning through a three-step process: setting goals and planning strategies, monitoring effectiveness, and evaluating and reflecting on their learning. The way I build my course can help them with each of these levels. For example, I can build knowledge checks into my activities so that students have additional information to use as they monitor the effectiveness of their learning strategies. Embedded multiple choice questions with immediate feedback work great in online modules when students work on their own. Surveys are a great tool for encouraging students to evaluate and reflect on their learning. I also build in opportunities for students to share their learning strategies with each other so that they can benefit from each other's effective strategies. Keeping all these ideas in mind as I plan my lessons and teach online can be very challenging at times. But it's more manageable for me when I remember that it's mostly about alignment. When my instruction is aligned through backward design, and my students match this alignment in their self-regulated learning, they are more likely to experience higher levels of motivation and achievement.